أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. The great American Muslim martyr Malcolm X, may Allah have mercy upon his soul, famously said, "Of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research." And on this day in the year 2021 Common Era, in which we are recognizing Genocide Memorial Day, I would like to briefly speak to you about the history and some of the contemporary effects of the Ma'afa, or the African Holocaust, on African American people in particular. The American colonial project, as we understand the United States of America today, started with the British colony of Virginia, and in the early 1600s, Black folks began to be brought here to what we know as America as not just slaves, but also indentured servants. And at that particular time, indentured servitude or servitude was not purely racialized or not a solely African-only endeavor. There were enslaved or indentured servants from Europe, such as the Irish, that was one of the more discriminated groups in the United States of America, or at that time in the first colonies, which now constitute America. However, in the year 1676, there is a famous event known as Bacon's Rebellion, in which there were European indentured servants along with African indentured servants who rose up and fought in a rebellion against the British-controlled governor of the colony of Virginia. That rebellion, that uprising, was put down. And from that point on, there began to be in the consciousness more so of white folks in America that there needed to be a splitting up of oppressed groups. And from this, we have what began to be more so written and codified in law, a separation between white and Black, relegating people of African descent into chattelhood, or being treated like property, like a cow, like a chicken or horse or other sorts of livestock, and that there was an erasure of the system of indentured servitude and no such thing as a free Black man or a free Black woman in the original colony of Virginia. From this chattel slavery, we then have, with the so-called Declaration of Independence, which was really the declaration of freedom for one group of white men being free from another group of white men being white men, or people who were classified as white in America, against the white man in Britain. The writer of that document, one of the so-called founding fathers of America, Thomas Jefferson, helped author what was known as the Three-Fifths Clause. And this Three-Fifths Clause was an agreement that was made between people in the South, white men, predominantly landowners, with those who were property owners in the North, that designated Black people, African people, constituting 3/5 of a human being as far as electoral college votes and regarding population count. And even these individuals who believed or wrote down the agreement that African people constituted 3/5 of a human being, in fact, these people did not recognize the intrinsic dignity or the equality of the humanity of Black with white, not just in the South, but also in the North, they didn't really recognize this. So the legacies that we have going back from chattel slavery to the 3/5 clause played themselves out with the Civil War and what's called the Reconstruction movement, of this perpetual fight by those who were in the status quo and the dominant culture, predominantly controlled by wealthy white people, to keep Black people as a permanent underclass. During the time of chattel slavery, Black people served a particular cause: free labor. Once that free labor was undone, and then there's a new type of slavery that was known as sharecropping came about, and then that was undone, that many people in the United States of America and the ruling class did not see people of African descent as having any sort of asset to the American society, a fabric of life, but more so of being a liability. So when we have liabilities, then there is, in the mind of capitalists or in the mind of those who control the status quo, they want to get rid of liabilities so that they can maximize their profit as well as their social capital. And one example of this is that there were rich white folks in the United States of America that came up with the idea of sending all Black people back to Africa. Let's get rid of the problem. Let's get rid of the liability. Actually, Abraham Lincoln, who was a president of the United States of America, who some people naively thought that he freed the slaves, that this was his motivation for fighting the Civil War. He had an idea and a plan to want to send Black people back to Africa. And he himself, he proclaimed that he didn't believe that the value of a Black person was equal to the value of a white person. There then began to be something that was formed called the American Colonization Society, that had a plan of wanting to send all Black people back to Africa. This is how the country of Liberia actually was founded, in West Africa, with the help and support of money from the American Congress, that Black people really weren't welcome here. When they found out that all Black people couldn't be sent back to Africa and there was too many of us to be killed, there just began to be further laws that were used to keep Black people as a permanent underclass, and also means and methods of wanting Black folks to basically cease to exist in any sort of free way, having social mobility or having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness here in the United States of America. So we have wicked type of pseudoscience that was developed in America, such as eugenics, with this idea of white superiority and Black inferiority, in which so-called scientists tried to use this as a means of saying that Black people, populations need to be controlled. There were even women such as Margaret Sanger who were involved in this and were champions of movements of trying to control birth rates, and to control birth rates in particular of Black people, that hopefully they thought would slowly decrease the Black population, and so that there would be less of a liability, they believed, on American society. Then we have other things besides Jim Crow. The so-called war on drugs that was started by President Nixon, that particularly target the Black community, in which cheap heroin was allowed to be inside the Black community, and there began to be aggressive policing and also targeting of the Black community, including Black leaders, with this so-called war on drugs that was started by President Nixon, which then increased under President Ronald Reagan. And we know of the infamous Iran-Contra deal, in which the CIA was directly involved and responsible for, on the one end, putting crack cocaine into the black community, and then on the other hand, having further aggressive policing on a federal level, predominantly against the black community. Then we saw an increasement upon this under President Bill Clinton, and stronger drug laws, which led to the new Jim Crow, or the mass incarceration that we have here in the United States of America, in which America, the so-called land of the free and the home of the brave, is the largest imprisoner in the world. The country of China has about 4 times more people than the United States of America, yet America has far more people in prison. And the framework would be that China is a dictatorship, it's a communist regime, yet we look at America that's supposed to be the beacon of hope, the beacon of democracy, in which we have this high level of mass incarceration. It reminds me actually of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran in terms of the children of Israel. And the Pharaoh, Fir'aun, had a plan. And the plan that he had to control the children of Israel so that there would not be a movement for them to be able to liberate themselves and to free themselves from oppression. Fir'aun's plan was, بعد أن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يقتلون أبناءكم ويستحيون نساءكم. This was the plot of Fir'aun. He said that he wanted to kill the young males, but then he spared the women. He let the women be free while he slaughtered the men, the young males, as a way of destabilizing the community of the children of Israel. Just like that Fir'aun of that time, the system of mass incarceration with black people is a continuation of the Ma'afa, of the African Holocaust. We have a situation in America where black men make up approximately 6% of the American population, yet make up almost half of the prison population. 6% make up about half. Then when we add on black women to that, and the black community in America makes up 12% of the American population, then we see, even with this, that black people are grossly and disproportionately incarcerated in comparison to our white counterparts. And this is a legacy that goes all the way back to Bacon's Rebellion, that then goes into governmental policies and social engineering that has real-time effects on black people today. It has real effects on how certain communities are policed, and we have issues like Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and countless others in which their black bodies get policed differently than the white bodies that were not policed when a overwhelmingly group of white supporters of President Donald Trump stormed in an attempt to try to undermine the election results of 2020. So these are the effects in America as it relates to the Ma'afa, to the African Holocaust, and the contemporary effects that plague the American society this day. There are so many more examples I could give. This history is so deep. There have been so many books that have been written about this issue. But as Malcolm X said, of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. And for order for us to make sure or to work towards genocides in the future don't take place. In order to deal with the current genocides that are going on right now, it's good for us to study history so that we can learn the lessons of history, that hopefully we can work to stop future genocides of taking place and to work together as a human family to stop the current genocides that are currently taking place right now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.